This is the American Forces Vietnam Network. Good morning, Vietnam!
The Vietnam War was a long, costly, and divisive conflict that pitted the Communist government of North Vietnam against South Vietnam and its principal ally, the United States. The conflict was intensified by the ongoing Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. More than 3 million people, including over 58,000 Americans, were killed, and over half the dead were Vietnamese civilians. Opposition to the war in the United States bitterly divided Americans even after President Richard Nixon ordered the withdrawal of U.S. forces in 1973. Communist forces ended the war by seizing control of South Vietnam in 1975, and the country was unified as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam the following year.
In Vietnam, the Tet Offensive, the Battle of Khe Sanh, the peace talks, and the bombing halt captured the headlines during 1968. The fighting in the streets of Saigon during the New Year or Tet Offensive made the war too real for UPI reporter Bill Riley.
A young Negro man is head wrapped in a bandage, a combat bandage, being helped across the road now. 3 others went out ahead of him. They're telling them, come on, come on. They're about 100 feet from me. Then 1, 2 more wounded. 3, 4, 5 coming out, just barely making it to the walls around the villa. The helicopter circling on, one man trips over a piece of debris at the outside of the alley, at the end of the alley.
These horrific scenes, described in a United Press International 1968 radio interview, are burned in the veterans' minds.
These are the sounds of war in Vietnam. They are sounds that become dreadfully familiar to American soldiers in Khe Sanh, Hue, and to reporters like Bill Riley in Saigon.
The alleyway, from where I can see now, just outside the side gate of the Joint General Staff of the South Vietnamese Command, is littered with bodies to the U.S. stretchers and a burned-out truck that carried in military policemen early in the morning. It looks like a scene from World War II is depicted on the... Here comes one of the fire teams we have to get down now.
UPI reporter Bill Riley was describing the scene in Saigon at the beginning of a Viet Cong major offensive. By American estimates, the offensive was a major military defeat for the communist-supported troops. For UPI audio newsman Roger Norham, 1968 in Vietnam meant his first look at death. Norham arrived in Vietnam in March. 2 months later, he and UPI photographer Charlie Eggleston were scampering from building to building, covering the fighting just outside of Saigon.
Oh, no. No! Charlie's been shot. Oh, my God! My God, he's... Charlie's been killed. Oh, my God, blood is streaming out of his nose and mouth. He's got it right in the head. Oh, Jesus.
Today, even after over 50 years, these images are still burned in the minds of the veterans. We interviewed some veterans, and this is what they had to say.
My guest today is 2 of those men who fought in Vietnam. They made it back unscathed as far as injuries go. PTSD is bothering both of them. Jerry Childers, 13 months in Vietnam with the 5th Army Mechanized Infantry, and Honda Lancaster, 1st Cav Mechanized Infantry. Good morning.
Good morning, Bobby. Good morning, Bobby.
We'll start with you, Handel. Can you recall, and I'm sure you can, your first day in Vietnam?
Oh, yeah, I definitely can, Bobby, because I'll never forget it as long as I live. Of course, when we left Corinth, you know, it was a long ride from Corinth. Well, actually, Fort Benning, Georgia. It's where we left on the plane going to Vietnam. But when we just coming over at the airport, getting ready to land, we looked out, and they was at that time we didn't know what it was, but it was mortar rounds and rockets hitting the ground. It looked like, you know, just looked like Christmas out there. We thought it was funny until we hit the ground. But when we hit the ground right there, was the CO come on and he said, as soon as you get off this plane, said hit a bunker, go be under heavy attack. Well, you know, I've never been to Vietnam before. I didn't have a clue where a bunker was at. So we got off the plane and everything. Cause I was a squad leader, you know, when I went to Vietnam, and some of the guys said, where we go? I said, just follow me. So I looked over here, and this was at night and everything, and I could see where some of them lights was off the mortar rounds and rockets coming out, you know, off the ground. I seen a bunch of containers out there. Well, I said, that's a good place to get. So we just climbed over them containers right there, and the firefight went on up in the morning, you know, till it got fairly good daylight. And we looked on them, on the containers. It had JP4, jet fuel, and diesel. If one spark had hit them things, we'd have been wiped out immediately. Because we didn't know that's what it was. But reason they had them in the containers, when they had a chopper shot down, a Huey or whatever, you know, or a tanker, run on a diesel, they would put them in these containers and keep it. And if these helicopters or, you know, whatever it was could be repaired, they was hauled into Saigon, and from Saigon, they was hauled in to Oakland, California, if they could be repaired. If they couldn't be repaired, they went to a junkyard out there, I called it. And I'm gonna say there's 30 acres or more in that junkyard, just full of equipment that couldn't be repaired. So yes, I remember it very well. And right then, I said to myself, I'm not gonna like this worth the crap. So that was my first day, and it was not good. I didn't like it.
The whole 14 months was pretty much like that too, wasn't it?
The whole 14 months, it was not a day. Well, I say, the goose wouldn't hardly hit you in the daytime. I mean, they was night. That's when they done their attack. Because all the VC had those black uniforms on, as black as that cup right there. And also at night it was so dark, you could put your hand like right in the front of you, and I promise you couldn't see it. You could do it like this, and you'd know your hand was moving, but you couldn't see it. And that's when them some guns would crawl around like moles and everything else and try to get you the best way they could. And they did. They got a bunch of them. But I was lucky. Good Lord with me, I guess, because I don't know how I made it back. I really don't. But I did. And I'm thankful to the good Lord I made it back. But I cannot say I made it back in good shape, because I didn't. After 14 months, when I did get home, I was physically and mentally wounded. And for 50-something years, I've lived with that. Plus all this other stuff that's went on. You know, like being not appreciated for what you done. But I'm sure we'll get into that a little later on.
Well, Jerry, do you remember your first day?
I sure do. It's pretty much like Hollow said. The only difference, everybody started hitting the hole, and I was right in behind them, or in front of them one.
You were on the hole, too.
But it was pretty much when we started to land, well, Harrisfield was getting hit. And looked down and see tracer and mortar rounds hitting, you realize real quick you don't want to be there. But I stayed there 13 months, and it's pretty much like that every day for 13 months.
Well, I admire you guys so much. Honnold, when did you first realize that you're a combat veteran?
The day that I was coming over at the airport before we got ready to land, seen them mortar rounds and rockets, that I knew I better have my big butt ready to go, because I'm not getting off this plane getting a cotton patch more like I got out coming over here. I knew that I had to be a man, and I was not a man until that day, and I become a man. That's just how fast a person can change, and it was nothing about it fun, Bobby. There was nothing about it fun. It was pure hell from the time we got there till the time we got on the plane, coming back home. It just was nothing about that place that was fun. And I think a lot of the people need to know about what some of the, well, not some of them, what all the Vietnam veterans went through. But, they don't, because you have, if you ain't talking to another Vietnam veteran, or a veteran in generally, but mostly if you're not talking to another Vietnam veteran, you can't talk to nobody, because they don't understand. They don't want to hear it to start with, and not even my own family don't understand it, and probably never will till the day I die. I don't feel like they will never realize some of the things that we went through, and things like that right there. Because the things you see sometimes, Bobby, it's not like going to the down the road and see a little car wreck or something like that. Every day over there, you never went by probably an hour without seeing bodies that was, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
I ain't gonna get into the whole 9 yards, but Americans that you trying to help and knowing they're gone, that you can't help. And it's sad, and you live with that every day, every night. It's like at night you have flashbacks and things like that. And, it's sad to say this, but I got to one point I was getting so bad. And, for some reason, it seemed like the older I got, the more this started hitting me, especially after I retired and all that stuff. But even when I was working, I had a problem like that. And I don't mind telling you, because a lot of people know it and a lot of people don't know it. And I'm really not ashamed of it. There's no telling how many psychiatrists, psychologists that I've been to. And I have been sent off. I don't know how many times. And, try to get rehabilitated. But if you've ever been in one of those places to where they send you, you worse shape out when you get back than you was before you got there. Because they treat you like dirt, and they try to give you medication that just melts your mind where you don't think of stuff like that. But what I get back around and say, I got so bad with those flashback stuff. My wife and me had to stop sleeping together at night. We love one another and all that stuff right there, and we husband and wife. But 2 or 3 times I have, hurt her accidentally, and so I didn't want to do something to her that might injure her forever. Because when you have those things, you right back over there and everything. So it's just not fun, Bobby.
Well, Jerry, when did you realize you were a combat veteran?
Well, first day I was there, and the second day we was in a firefight. It lasted quite a while that night. And I learned one thing real quick, you know. We're just like Hollow. We'd never been away from home. We was homesick, and we was scared. And I don't care to admit I was scared. And anybody that says they're not scared, I think they're lying.
Something wrong with them.
Something wrong with them. But I didn't know a fella could get so close to the ground. But you can. But it was like that for the rest of the time I was there, off and on, you know, maybe not every day, but, you know, practically every day, something went on of some nature. And, well, when you get back, like Arnold said, you know, it'd been 50 years plus, and it's the same thing. As a fella told me one time, I guess he explained it better than anybody. Somebody asked him when he was in Vietnam, and he said last night.
Yeah.
And that pretty well summed it up.
When was the last time you were in Vietnam? Last night?
Last night.
Hollow? Last night?
I was in, a matter of fact, I think I got over at 8 o'clock last night, and I left Vietnam at 4 o'clock this morning.
Well.
If that tells you anything. In other words, sometimes it goes with me. It's not just a period, like, you know, 1 minute, 2 minutes, something like that. When it starts, you know, it just lasts longer than a person would think it would. That people don't realize how that has messed your whole life up. And there's nothing I don't think you can do to get out of that, because, like I said, I've been to a multitude of psychiatrists, psychologists, and I'm not ashamed of it, not one bit. And if people wants to put me down for that, then I feel sorry for them.
Well, I've seen some psychiatrists, psychologists, and I learned right quick they didn't know the first thing about it, because they hadn't been there.
Yep, that's right.
I think Jerry was telling me one day, he said, you know what, them people are crazier than I am.
I think they wanted to hurt us.
And I had honestly, I had a doctor, I don't call no names, I had a doctor tell me, this doctor I'm talking about, he knows me very well, and he told me, he said, Arnold said, you got to be crazy to be a psychiatrist. So that hurt him. And they asked you some of the craziest, stupidest questions you ever seen in your life. Man, I'll give you a small example, and then we'll move on to something else if you want to. I was at one, and this particular place they sent me off to was in, somewhere in Little Rock, Arkansas. I don't even know if the place is there or not anymore. It was just back when I was a whole lot younger than what I am now. And he's real smart talking to me to start with, which that was the wrong thing to do with me at the point in time. But he took a bottle of ink, took a piece of paper, blank piece of paper, and he just poured that ink out on that paper, set it back down. He said, now you tell me what that looks like. I said, it looks just like you, and I can't tell you everything I told him. So, I mean, that's some of the things they do to you, you know, to try to pick you and things like that. So, it's more harm to me, Bobby, than it was good. And I know Jerry can tell you the same thing, because they're crazy. Absolutely crazy. And anybody out in radio land is listening to that has ever been to one of them, I guarantee you they'll tell you the same thing.
Well, Jerry would have been better if these psychologists would have been Vietnam veterans.
Well, if it had been Vietnam veterans, they probably wouldn't have been a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
They'd have been the same.
Sense.
They'd have been the same shape we was in.
Not that I'm running them down, but I guess I am.
Well, I can't imagine what you guys
and you
went
don't
through.
learn everything out of a book. You got to experience a lot of things before you know.
Well, was Vietnam a just war? Should we have been there?
Well, I was there 13 months and I hadn't figured out why yet. If that tells you anything.
What'd you say, Bobby?
Was Vietnam a just war? Should we have been there?
I'm gonna tell you something about that right there now. And people say I'm crazy, whatever. Again, Vietnam was a political, money-making war, and to this day, I guarantee you, Johnson went to his grave with blood on his hands and a pocket full of money. All them politicians back then, all they want is money. Bobby, let me tell you something, son. Why would they have sat over and went on for 17 years, that war? 58,000+ men, Americans, got killed, and God only knows how many goats got killed. And they just kept on letting that thing go and go and go and go. And I'll tell you what, in my opinion only, that war could have ended in at least 1 month. They could have wiped it all completely off the map. All they had to do is get about 3 of them B-52 bombers, put in the air, and it wouldn't have been 3 weeks to the American soldiers had been in Corinth or wherever they lived. And people out there don't know that I personally seen, and these boys were dead. I mean, you can't hide some of that stuff. They were dead. They were 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And they were in the same battalion I was in. Of course, you know, and I know, and everybody else knows, they had to lie about their age, which they did to get in the military. And back then, all they was wanting is to go. It didn't make them no difference. Just 12 years old. And I know personally of myself, around, I'm going to say at least 12 or 14 that I know of, young boys come back in a box. And you think about ending your life when you're 15 years old. Of course, I know things has happened like that in civilian life. And I know the people said that to happen to their family or whatever is hard to swallow. But anyway, I was drafted myself. I didn't have no choice. If I'd had a choice, do you think for a minute that I'd have went over there? If you do, you've lost your mind. I would not. I would have. And if I knew then what I knew after I got over there, I would have pulled Bill Clinton when they was.
I'd have been right beside him.
Or leading the way one.
One of us have been.
We're going to be right back with more from Vietnam.
I'm in with the in crowd.
If you've arrived in Vietnam after October 1st, there's a new regulation out that says the name tags on your fatigue uniforms must slant down along the tops of the pockets. So get with it. Get it on as soon as you can.
Chu Hoi means open arms. The Chu Hoi program has given the former enemy an opportunity to become a useful citizen. Each Chu Hoi returnee means less firepower for the enemy, and you can do your part. Treat the returnees well, and be sure to issue a receipt for any weapons turned in. For continued success, it's your responsibility to know and understand the rules of the Chu Hoi program.
The night President Johnson said he would not seek re-election in 1968, he made another announcement.
Tonight I have ordered our aircraft and our naval vessels to make no attacks on North Vietnam. The area in which we're stopping our attacks includes almost 90% of North Vietnam's population and most of its territory.
This action paved the way for preliminary peace talks to begin. After some haggling about where the peace talks would take place, Paris was finally selected, and on May the 13th, the talks began.
America's chief negotiator at these Vietnam talks, Averill Harriman, is certainly not optimistic about any speedy agreement to end the fighting. In a sidewalk news conference, the presidential envoy was asked how long he expected to remain here in Paris.
I did make a speculation when I went to Moscow for the test ban agreement that I thought it would take us 10 days to come to agreement. We came to agreement on the 10th day, but I wouldn't want to make any such prediction this time.
During the summer, the talks appeared to get nowhere. It was not until Halloween night, when the president announced a full bombing halt of North Vietnam, that any progress was made. The South Vietnam government, after initially refusing to enter the talks at this stage, did agree to meet in Paris, and the hope for peace in Vietnam was encouraged.
Welcome back, folks. We've been talking about Vietnam today. My guest is Jerry Childers. He served 13 months in Vietnam with the 5th Army Mechanized Infantry, and Hannah Lancaster with the 1st Cav, also in the Mechanized Infantry. And we've been talking about their experience in Vietnam. Did either one of you or both of you have a best friend in Vietnam? Jerry?
Yes, we did.
Are you still in contact, or you make it back home?
Well, some of them didn't make it back home, and you learn real quick not to make best friends, because you don't know how long they're going to be there with you, how long you're going to be there, you know. They might be there 1 minute and dead the next minute, and you just don't get real close to people. I mean, they got your back, and you got theirs, and they'd do anything for you, but you just, you know, you just exist. You don't make best friends, in my opinion. Because I don't like to lose best friend.
No. I can't imagine, huh?
Oh yeah, kind of like Jerry said, you know, and I did when I first got over there. You know, I'd want to be, we wouldn't be close together. But as every day goes by, you've already seen this buddy right here. He's gone. They shipped him back in a box. And the more that happens, you realize I don't need to get close to him or whatever, which I have one today. He lives in South Haven. I'm not going to call no name. But he hung on to me just like glue. I mean, I'm serious. He just like I was his daddy. And the whole time over there, he was behind my back. You know, he was not in front of me, he was behind me. And I took care of him the best I could. And he and I both made it back home. And everything like that. But and I've had so many friends, buddies, we call them, that was shipped back in a pine box. Had one was from Corinth. And we was over there same time, and I seen him, you know, 2 or 3 times. Like I said, me and Jerry may be together today, and it may be 6 months before we see one another again. Well, this particular guy was from Corinth, and he got a message through the Red Cross. He got a message through the Red Cross that his brother had got killed. So they sent him home to his brother's funeral. And after the funeral was over, they sent him back to Vietnam. The minute he stepped off that plane, it's just like I said it was when our first day in Vietnam, he got hit by a mortar round. They shipped him back in a pine box to be buried beside his brother. And another one that was over there that I actually went to school with, he was over there. And he stepped on a landmine. And there was nothing left of that boy. Not one thing. I think they found one of his dog tags is what they put in a box. A pine box, and sent it back to Corinth. And he was, and y'all know the man as well as I do. But that's some of the things that happen. It's just, Bobby's just like me and you being super good friends. Well, if something happened to you, you know, it'd be hard for me to get over it. But we're not in the war here in Corinth. I mean, in a way we are in a war, but not like Vietnam. But when you lose a friend over there, you know you got to keep going. Because if you stop and think about this buddy and, you know, mourn over him all the time, then you're going to be right beside of him coming home in a box. Now, that's just my opinion about, you know, what kind of, how to have buddies and how not to have buddies over there. Even though in your mind, you know, you might think it, but just don't do it. And it's sad. You think, man, you over there in a war, you know, we got to be real good friends because you might have to watch my back, which we did that. Not me watch yours and all that stuff, and go out at night and have a beer or something like that, you know, and party. You don't do that in Vietnam. You might celebrate a box of stinking sea rations and stuff like that, which they did give us beer. I mean, you know, the Army furnished it, or you could get a beer for like 3 cents. And I never drank a beer in my life. I'll tell you this and get on something else. Never drank beer in my life, not even going through school, till I got to Vietnam. And I drank so much beer over there, I actually got addicted to the taste. And I don't care who knows that. I did. But you had to drink beer or starve to death because you couldn't drink the water. It's like, I know all y'all smelt sulfur, that old sulfur. That's what the water tastes like. They'd put these stinking purifying pills in them to kind of purify the water. And they didn't care whether you drank it or not. That's how much the government cared about you. If he don't drink it, you know, to hell with him. They didn't care, Bobby, they didn't care nothing about you. There's no other Vietnam veteran that's ever stepped out of the plane to fight for our country that we fought for the freedom that they are in this United States. And then people did not care when you got back.
Hal, I understand you had a little run-in at a business here. Don't call any names or where, but
I did. Bobby, I know people just thought it behind their back and they never did say nothing. But it's been, 5 or 6 years ago. Of course, a friend I'm talking about, we were in Vietnam together at the same time and real good friends. Even then and when we got back too, done a lot of things together after we got back. And this particular morning, made wanted to get a donut, you know, and this business over here, I won't call no name, but it's on 72 over there. Went in there to get a donut. AJ was in front of me, and I was behind him. And as soon as both of us had our caps on, just like what I've got right here today. It had Vietnam veterans. And this particular guy, and I don't know today who it was, it said, I'll never forget his face, and I hadn't seen this since that particular date. He said, well, here comes a couple of baby killers. I mean, out loud, and there was several people in there. And I had fire in my eyes. If I'd have had a gun on me, I promise you I'd have shot him right there. Because, I get sick of hearing that. I've heard stuff like that for 50 years about, baby killers and stuff like that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, Bobby, that they wasn't some babies that got killed over there. Because I'd be lying to you. There was definitely babies that got killed. There was women that got killed. There was children that got killed. There was men, all walks of life that got killed. Look, we lost 58,000 or better Americans, and you won't sit here and tell me that there wasn't babies got killed. It was a war, son. What else would you expect? There's mortar rounds dropping, rockets dropping, B-52s dropping, them Huey helicopters with 50 calibers. And yes, there were definitely babies got killed. But now I'm gonna tell you something, Bobby. Which we seen a bunch of children. If you think, and these people that don't know crap thinks that I just walked up to a baby and pulled my gun out and pow, shot him, well, you are bad wrong. And I can't say what I'd like to say about people that thinks we were baby killers. We were not. We had to do what we had to do, and we had no idea who it was, how old it was, or nothing like that. Because you think they would have cared about us? No, they say, no, I can't, don't shoot that guy, he's real young. That's bull. And that's the way I feel about people that goes around and has no respect whatsoever for the Vietnam veterans. Not just me and Jerry. I'm talking about all the Vietnam veterans. And as far as that goes, any war, but I don't know of another war that was fought that they was treated like Vietnam veterans. And if you know of one, or anybody out there knows of one, I wish you'd tell me.
I
Never.
can't. Jerry, I'm sure that you probably, in some combat missions, you took fire from villages, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Now, were you supposed to go up there and knock on all those hoochies and say, if you got any women and children in here, get them out?
No.
You had to return fire.
Well, we were there. We were trying to kill them. They were there. They was trying to kill us. If a 10-year-old shot you or a 30-year-old shot you, you're still just as dead.
And there were children involved.
Oh, yeah. That's all they knew all their life was fighting.
We talked about your first firefight. No, I didn't ask you about your first firefight, Donald. We got off on something else. Do you remember it?
I remembered it was the same night that I got off the plane once we, it was, like I said, it was still dark when it kind of settled down. And we all had I had a M16, I had a 45 caliber pistol, and I had hand grenades on me, and I also had a 50 caliber. That's how we was loaded down there. And that, like I said, they very seldom ever hit you in the daytime, but they was determined not to give up, because the Tet was just a little piece, and they was getting ready for the Tet, pretty close. And people out there don't know what a Tet was. It's the worst time that's ever been in history of the Vietnam War. And the veterans out there that's been to Vietnam can verify what I'm saying. It was pure hell on earth.
And that's the first Tet offensive that they didn't have a ceasefire.
Right. And it was
68.
It was constant. And you imagine leaving this building right here, any of you, and walking out there and knowing that there's somebody is fixing to drop a mortar round on you or shoot you with AK-47. And in some of the cases, the VC was using American weapons that was taken off of the some of the Americans that got killed. They was turning around and killing Americans with their own stuff. And that's really sad.
It's okay, Honnold. Have at it.
They was using mortar rounds. You could dig a tail fin up, had USA all across the bottom of it. They'd stay them, fire them back at us.
Well, we talked about your first day in Vietnam. We talked about a firefight you're involved in. We talked about it being a just war. We talked about best friends. And are you still in contact? We've talked about when did you realize you were a combat veteran. We've done all that. Now we're getting ready to come back home. What was your last day in Vietnam like, Jerry?
Probably the longest day of my life.
I bet it was.
Well, you know, you hate to leave the bunch of guys. You know, I'm not saying we're best friends, but, you know, we'd been together for 13 months. And that's a long time to be together, you know.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah.
7 days a week.
He was wishing all of them could go with you, but they couldn't, you know. That's the way it was. When your time was up, well, you left, and they did too.
Well, you know what, Bobby, I'll say this. When I knew that I was coming home, of course, I knew a couple of days before that I was going to get on that Freedom Bird and come home. Well, we was in a firefight, all the time, but especially the last night that I was there before I was going to leave the next day, we was in they was dropping mortar rounds and rockets just completely all over. So like I said, during that Tet Offensive, and you was nothing to them gooks, nothing. And when I left to come back home, the plane was surrounded with military, with their M16s and whatever else they had. And we got on that plane, and I never had this feeling before in my life. It's like, you know, you leaving a place that has been your home for 14 months, and you leaving friends that'll never make it home alive, but yet you getting on that plane. And when I got on that plane, when we got airborne, I done this like this to the ground, because I knew I had buddies down there. And some of them, Bobby, they stayed there. They never did come home. They stayed right there because I don't know how to put it. They were single when they went over there. They found a girl that they fell in love with, and they never come back home. And I'm gonna say they didn't last too long after they got home. But I'd like to say this: when I did before I left, and when I did get home, when I stepped my foot off right there at 5 Point, at the home place, or at the house at that time. When I was the day that I was leaving to go to Vietnam, my mother, they had an outside light, and she had put a new bulb in that, you know, in the socket there. And she asked me if I'd turn it on. And I did. I turned the light on. She said, "Now, son, when you get back, I want you to turn it off. And if it goes out before you get back, I know something's happened." Well, I don't care if you believe this. You don't have to believe it. You can call me a liar. Now, for 14 months, and it's kind of unheard of, a light that would burn that long. And when I got out of the vehicle to go up the steps, that light popped just like that.
Went out.
It went out.
You were being protected. Promise you were.
When I left, that plane was sitting there. I said to myself, that thing has flew millions of miles. Just sure as I get on that sucker, it's going to crash.
And I got, let me, real quick, here about, it's been about a month ago, I had been up here at the courthouse, and I was coming out. I'd been to get a tag, and I stopped by the VA, talked to them a minute. I got in my truck, and I seen this kid walking down the walkway right there in front of my truck where I was parked. And he said, "Sir, can I shake your hand?" And I kind of laughed, and I said, "Well, sure, what you gonna shake my hand for?" He said, "I have never shook a Vietnam veteran's hand before." And he talked to him a little bit, and he said, "Do you need some money?" I said, no, son, I'm fine. And that just it just blew my mind because people, you used to somebody spitting on you or something like that, and this was a kid. And so that, you know, I was glad to know that there's somebody out there, even young people, that does care. And that really shocked me.
All right, Jerry, final thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think we pretty well covered it.
Well,
I think you found out that neither one of us really didn't want to go.
Yeah.
But we did, because we was asked to go.
Final thoughts?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the good Lord in heaven for helping bringing me back, because I don't think I would have made it without him being with me and kind of guiding me and helping me. Even though there's 58,000 that got killed, I still give God the credit for bringing me back home to Alcorn County.
Well, to him goes all the praise and glory. I can assure you
That's
that.
right.
No matter how we feel.
If it wasn't for
one
him.
final question. I know you're both just a little bit bitter about Vietnam. Would you have felt better today about Vietnam if you hadn't been treated like you were when you came home?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I would have. You know, if they people just had the guts to say, man, thank you for your service and our freedom.
You don't know how much a simple thank you would have meant.
Somewhere in this jungle, there's several hundred North Vietnamese soldiers who could wipe out this little American unit to the last man in an unguarded moment. Today, though, it's quiet. A few bunkers uncovered, then a quick lunch, and back down the trail to the pickup zone. Just a peaceful walk in the sun.
Okay. Okay, would you roll in a 270 from the smoke, approximately 100 meters away from it. I'll adjust you from there.
All right, who's wounded? Not our war. We must say no. Are we gonna go? Hell no, we won't go. 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 Hell no, we won't go.
Radio Remembers will be back next week with another look at Vietnam.